The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. It is not often that I start the show by leaping headlong into our guest, but to call this man a guest is incorrect, because this man was a host of Fantasy NBA Today from its very first show. It is the great, the Miracle Man, Vince Miracle. Welcome back. It's been too freaking long. How are you?
Man, it feels weird to be back on here, and I thought it was hoop dash ball presentation. Man, I was missing the dash part, or hoop blob. I remember when Aaron did that one too. But yeah, man, I'm doing good. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be talking to the Besbris.
Yeah, that doesn't have the same ring as the Miracle Man, does it?
No. But I'm glad we're recording now, because I didn't want to do it when we were off air, catching up a little bit. I told you this in text message a little bit, but I've been thinking about you a lot. So it was crazy when you reach out and let's say, hey, let's get on the show because the Kings are doing good. Because I was watching that entire World Series, and when I knew the Dodgers were in there, I was like, I know one man who was a fan and would wear his jersey when we started recording shows on the day the games were on. Man, are you a little disappointed that they lost?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, it hurt more last year because they were so close and they felt like they could compete with the Astros last season. Everything was sort of lined. The bullpen was better. This year, going into that series with Boston, I don't think there were very few Dodger fans who felt like they were going to win that series. If they did, it was going to be a massive upset, and the meltdown in Game 4 sort of crushed the whole thing. But you are correct. I watched every second of that 7-hour ball game. It was actually kind of heartwarming. My wife fell asleep from the 14th to the 16th innings of that game, and then we got into bed in the bottom of the 18th, and I said, look, if nothing happens in this one, we're going to sleep. And then Max Muncy hit that walk-off, and we hugged. It was weird. It was this very genuine hug, thank God we get to go to bed now. It's over. It's all over. We can turn the page to the next day. But yeah, baseball's was sort of my first love. I think I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast. Basketball kind of came second for me. But yeah, what's up with you, man? What's going on? What have you been up to?
Man, I've been doing a lot of King stuff. A lot of basketball stuff. And again, I want to save it for kind of the end, so I don't just talk about myself all in the beginning. But I got stuff going on with Dash Radio and things like that. But just kind of keep my head down and just kind of chugging along, working and making sure my name stays a little bit out there. That's kind of really it. But before we go away from this baseball game, I also want to note that I made money on that 18-inning game.
Attaboy.
I made some money on that game. And the reason why is because I put it in a parlay with the Kings beating the Wizards on that same day.
Oh, anybody
in a parlay.
Anybody beating the Wizards is a good bet right now. Washington, what a disaster that team is.
Yeah, they are. They're horrible. I don't know. I'm gonna put it on the record now, and I bet you everyone's already saying it. But I said it before the season even started that if this Wizards team is not good, they're breaking it up. This is gonna be the last year you see of Wall and Bill if they don't start putting this stuff together. But the good news is Dwight Howard might be coming back on Friday, and you know how John Wall loves running pick and rolls. Maybe that turns the tide for him. But right now they are.
They are terrible. And Dwight Howard, we know how much he doesn't love running pick and roll. So we'll see how that whole thing shakes out too. But yeah, man, you've been covering the Kings. By the way, you can follow Vince on Twitter at VMCenter. At VMCenter. He is Vince Miracle. He's covering the Kings. He's at SacKingsNation.com. The Kings Court is the podcast. I know you said you're going to talk about it later, but I want people to know here right at the outset. And your Kings, Vince, your Kings are actually not that terrible. I don't know if you heard the big news. I took the No Kings Allowed sign off of my treehouse, and they're on my fantasy team now. At least a couple of them are. I know. It's not someone else's headache anymore. Throwing it back to the good old days. Someone else's headache. I wonder if people remember that. We were really getting started. This was probably about 2 years ago, almost to the day, and I actually had a soundboard going for this podcast. Yeah. We were going full cheeseball talk radio style with Herbert the Pervert noises from Family Guy.
I'll never forget the first time you did that voice on air. I was so weak. That sounds so funny.
I'll do it again right in the middle of an episode just to see if I can break you. But tell me, why are the Kings, are they just catching teams by surprise? Are they legitimately better? What's going on?
I honestly thought the first 2 wins, I thought, you know what, maybe it's a little bit by surprise. They looked good against the Jazz, although they fell short in their opener. But they're on a 4-game winning streak right now. They are playing with such a speed that I think only a handful of teams can actually match. And on top of that, they're shooting the ball with such efficiency. And I think the one thing you can say about this Kings team right now, and it's something you have not been able to say about them for such a long time, is they're starting to build an identity with their roster. And they want to move the ball, and I think they're sticking with the guys that can move the ball, and they're building off of it, and it looks good. And I think that what's catching other teams by surprise is how fast they move for such a long period of time. They do it for all 4 quarters. They're constantly moving and pushing the pace and keeping their opponents on their toes, or on their heels, I should say. So I think it's a little bit by surprise. I think a lot of teams go into it underestimating the Kings, but now on a 4-game winning streak, I think that they're going to start getting a little bit more recognition. And they got a good game coming up on Friday where I chose them to lose that game. I've had every game right this week. I chose them to lose that game mainly just due to the fact the last I checked, Atlanta still has a top 10 defense, and they're the number 1 in pace in the league. So it's going to be a tough game for them. But as long as they capitalize on Atlanta's turnovers, we could be looking at a 5-game winning streak early on for the Sacramento Kings.
So how are they able to push the pace like this while also utilizing an actual starting lineup of guys that get minutes near 30? It almost seems like those two things should fly in the face of one another, but we've not only seen a better pace, but we've also seen more minutes for the guys that we've sort of all wanted to get minutes for a year and a half.
I think you gotta give credit to Dave Yeager. He basically said it this year. He said, we're going young. We're not going to see much of Kosta Koufos or Zach Randolph. They moved on from Garrett Temple. They're basically saying this is the youth movement. This is the time where, we're going to just give these guys minutes and see what they can do. We've groomed them. And I think Temple was a big reason why they took that next step. And I think you saw that with how De'Aaron Fox, after playing Memphis, tweeted out to Garrett Temple and said, you showed me how to be a leader. And you're looking at the players and how are they able to push the pace. It's because of the players that they have. You have a speedy guy in De'Aaron Fox who is just becoming incredibly consistent. I know he's had I think 1 or 2 duds already on the season, but really has been consistent with how he's been playing and how he's been pushing the ball. I think you're seeing Buddy Hield get a little bit more playmaking ability. Although I don't really like him running the point guard a lot, and they do tend to do that sometimes. But when he gets the ball off of a rebound and just starts flooring it up the court, it really, offsets the opponent's defense. And because he's been shooting the ball at such a high rate, knocking down 3 3-pointers per game right now, you don't know what he's going to do. And I think, honestly, it's just been the growth of all of these young players that are in this starting 5. And then on top of that, the Kings have finally added a stretch 4 in Bjelica, who is not even arguably, it's 100% fact. He has been the best addition to this team this offseason.
That is a mind-boggling thing to say after what we saw. And, he's like a 30-something-year-old rookie last year. How has he been able to fit in so seamlessly with this young core?
Bjelica. Well, I don't think Bjelica was a rookie last year because he was playing with Minnesota for the last couple of years.
Was it 2 or so? 2 years ago, he was like a 30-something, but he's an older guy. I think he's 30 now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's an older guy. What it is he can shoot the 3 ball, and he's knocking it down with consistency. And we've seen what he can do when given the minutes at that stretch 4 spot. When he was taking over minutes for Jimmy Butler in Minnesota, when we saw Bjelica, get minutes in Minnesota, he was very, very productive. He's an underrated passer. I don't think he's a great passer, but he's an above-average passer, especially from his position. He's a threat, and I think because of the fact that Fox is pushing that pace and getting to the rim, Buddy's knocking down shots and is constantly moving. His movement without the basketball has been fantastic. And Willie being able to make passes over his shoulder and also from the high post has been giving Bjelica a lot of open opportunities. And then when he gets the switch on smaller guys, he has been smart enough to take them down low and has been finishing in the post. So he's just become very versatile. Again, he's the stretch four the Kings have been looking for years, and I think that's why he's been so successful. And the Kings believe in him. Remember, this is a guy that signed with Philly and then backed out of it and said he was going to go play overseas and was convinced by Vlade to come back, here's the contract, and play for the Kings. And he's showing out, and it looks like Vlade made the right decision.
Yeah, he looks amazing. He looks unbelievable so far. He was actually the guy that had me finally take my no Kings allowed sign off the treehouse, because it did seem like he was locked into 30-plus minutes in basically every competitive ballgame so far. What we've seen to this point, Vince, it looks like, is Bjelica, Fox, and Hield have been, and maybe you could even argue Willie Cauley-Stein, have basically been given this full complement of minutes, but it's not clear that there's a fifth guy yet. Am I missing anybody in that crew, or is that four kind of the main four right now?
Yeah, the core is definitely going to be Fox, Hield, Willie, and Bjelica as that veteran presence. I think the one that we're missing, and everyone is anxious to see how he's going to play when he returns, is Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Yeah.
Because he was arguably the team's best player last year. He gives out effort on both sides of the floor. He's a good passer, a good floor spacer, and he knows the game. And also he was former teammates with Bjelica, who was a EuroLeague MVP, and he's a EuroLeague MVP. So that you're gonna see. I think you're gonna start seeing the Kings show their identity. I think right now you're starting to see what their identity could be, and it's nice to see it. That's nice to see them on a 4-game winning streak, but you can't solidify that yet. That's not 100% of what they are. When Bogdanovic is there and you start seeing the real rotation, I think that's going to be who they are. And then we're not even mentioning the fact that Marvin Bagley has looked good early on as a rookie in the minutes that he's been getting, and defensively he's surprised me with some of the stops that he's getting. I think he's a really good recover defender, and I didn't think I would say that at this point, but he is. I think Harry Giles is still developing, which is nice. But I mean, I think he's going to start getting more minutes, but until he starts, becoming more consistent, you're going to start seeing Costa in the lineup, and I think that's why you saw him against Orlando. But they got some nice pieces, man. I think the fifth one that we're missing though is still Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Yeah, it seems like he's that guy, because right now it seems like guys like Justin Jackson are seeing more minutes perhaps than they'd normally get, and maybe those could fall to Bogdanovic. From a fantasy standpoint, Bogdan twice averaged about 12, 3, and 3 last year with a steal and 1.7 3-pointers. Given the pace and the seeming willingness now to play these younger guys, and I know he's sort of an older rookie last year also, where is the ceiling for Bogdan? Could he get to, say, 14, 4, and 5, or is that out of reach just given there are only so many shots and opportunities? What do you think he could do this year?
I think you're right on. I don't know. I think the rebounds stay kind of right around 3 to 4, just because of the fact that I think he's going to be one of those guys that's pushing the pace with Hield. But at the same time, Buddy Hield has been grabbing a ton of rebounds, so the guards have been rebounding very well. So we're going to see how he comes in. I think the assist numbers are going to go up because he's going to take the ball out of Fox's hand and let him become a slasher a little bit more. And I think that we haven't seen that enough yet because there's not another ball handler that can take care of the ball. But I think you're going to see right around those same numbers. I think you might see a 2.5 3-pointers per game from him, which is nice. I think he's going to be at the bottom end of maybe making top 100 value, probably the bottom end of that. I think he might be 8th round value. But I mean, if you can get that out of Bogdanovic, who's going to get a ton of minutes, that small forward position for the Kings is just a toss-up. Justin Jackson has not looked good. He looks lost out there. He's finally finding some legs at times, but he's just not looking good. And then I don't really want to trust Iman Shumpert giving him 30 minutes tonight, so it's going to be Bogdanovic. He's going to get the minutes. He's going to get the shots. The Kings are going to trust him to shoot it. They're going to trust him to make the right plays. And him and Willie Cauley-Stein had a nice 1-2 game last season, so I'm excited to see if that's going to evolve and what that evolves into. So I think you're right. I think 14 4, and 5 would be fair, and I think 2.5 3-pointers would be a nice little expectation from him.
That'd be pretty sweet, considering a lot of folks were able to grab him off the waiver wire when the injury news broke and he got sent out to pasture by a lot of fantasy teams as well. It seems like, Vince, looking just at the minutes breakdown when we try to figure out exactly where they're all going to go, even just a quick glance at last night's box score, you're like, okay, Troy Williams played 34 minutes, Justin Jackson played 20. That's like 54 minutes that I don't know if the Kings are necessarily committed to giving those guys. Is that why you feel so confident that Bogdan can just step in and play pretty large minutes, or is there something else?
No, that's exactly the reason why. That small forward position is just a crapshoot of who's going to show up and who's going to play. I think Bogdanovich showed consistency last year. He showed effort on both sides of the ball. And the fact that Troy Williams, who is on a 2-way contract, was able to come into Orlando. And I mean, he played great too. He played fantastic in his minutes. I mean, he hustled, he dove on the ground for the ball. It's a position of need right now, and Bogdanovich can fill it. Is he the ideal fit for a small forward? No, but he can fill that position. He can also slide over to the 2 and also take over ball handling duties as the offset one, so that a guy like Frank Mason can be on the floor as well, or Yogi Ferrell. So he's gonna get the minutes. The minutes are gonna be there for him. You're seeing Buddy Hield and Fox get over right around 32 minutes per game between the two of them, 33 minutes. He's gonna be one of those guys as well. He's gonna be one of those guys as well.
That seems like a fairly beautiful thing. Again, talking to Vince Miracle, my former co-host, and now our Sacramento Kings expert here on Fantasy NBA Today. Again, Vince at VM Center on Twitter, the editor-in-chief of SacKingsNation.com, the host of the Kings Court podcast. You guys should go check that joint out. What about Marvin Bagley? You mentioned that you were impressed with his defense so far. He seems like he's kind of stuck in that 20 to 25 minute range. Is that a number you think goes up or stays constant as the year goes on?
I think it's one of those numbers that's going to stay constant. Bielitsa's playing out of his mind right now. Again, they need a stretch 4. And also, Dave Yeager's not one of those guys that like to play as rookies. We had that big issue last season with De'Aaron Fox. We wanted to see Fox get more minutes, and constantly we didn't get to see him get as many minutes as he's getting right now. And I don't see him going up too much. He might get up to that 27, 28 mark, which is fine. And that gets you a potential double-double every single night. But you never know when he's going to get that. Because against, what was it? What was the team they beat? What was it? At Miami, he only played like 18 minutes, 16 minutes in that game. And then the next night, because it was the second half of the back-to-back, then he goes over there and he plays above 20 minutes. So you're gonna have those games where he's not doing much but just grabbing you boards and putting up a couple points. But you're gonna have those other games where, let's say like if you're a DFS player and you're listening to this show, this guy put up a 46 and he's only costing you $5,000 on FanDuel, or $4,400 I think on DraftKings, and he's exceeding his value by almost 20 points. I mean, that's something you're always gonna want to keep your eye on. Is he going to be a player that I'm going to roster on my team if I'm in a standard 12-man league? Probably not. But you get to a 14 to 16 team league, yeah, he might be a guy I'll keep my eye on for the second half of the season.
How's your DFS stuff going? I think you won a PlayStation when we were doing our podcast a couple years ago.
Yeah, man, I won a PlayStation 4 the other day. I believe. Let me check. Actually, let me check right now because I have FanDuel right here on my phone. I believe I was like 5 points away from winning 2 tickets to a Kings, to a Miami game on FanDuel. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I lost, so it didn't happen. But I almost won it. I think I won like a jersey though on FanDuel.
Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm probably just put it into my son's room.
Yeah, put it on the wall or put it on eBay. Those are the two choices, I guess.
I've realized the older that I get, I don't really like wearing jerseys anymore. Like when I was a kid, I used to love like putting on a jersey and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm wearing this guy's jersey." Like now, I never wear jerseys anymore.
I cannot. I mean, you know me. I could not rock a jersey outside of my house. It would be so. Sometimes this is like more embarrassing moments with Dan. So my last season in Bakersfield, we gave away Bakersfield franchise throwback jerseys every Thursday. Because the team, we had 11 Thursday games, and we had 10 different affiliations since 1941. So I have these, like, they're pretty cool, actually. The logos are pretty cool, but the jersey themselves are kind of junky. That's what I wear when I walk the dog at 7 in the morning. Looking, bleary-eyed, and my hair is all tousled, and I'm in my pajama pants and like a weird jersey that says Bakersfield Indians on it. And I think people just assume that I'm a wacko. That's as close as I'll ever get to wearing a jersey outside, and that's just on my street. So I'm with you on that one, man. We're old men now. We can't play a young man's game.
Yeah, I think the only time I wear a jersey is I have a North Carolina Michael Jordan jersey. It's really cool. It's actually a really cool jersey, and I actually got this jersey for $12 at a Goodwill, and it's a very nice jersey. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I use it to wear it around the house to clean. Like it's my cleaning, it's my cleaning jersey. Like I just mop the floors or like I'll like vacuum and clean, and I get hot when I'm cleaning, so I put on a tank top, and it just so happens to be my Michael Jordan jersey. Got to put the sweat in. I just do it.
We're not that dissimilar, you and I. I just exist in a state of sweating. I go generally white undershirt, and that way I can just throw it in the laundry as soon as I'm done. But yeah, I'm always like leaning under things, dust busting between the dog and the kid. And you got two. You got two little monsters running around.
I got 2 dogs too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I got a full house over here, but I'm gonna tell you this right now: no more kids, no more dogs. That's how I have it. At least not for a while. Not for a while. I gotta hit the brakes on that one.
Might I advise investing in one of those like in elementary school dust mops? You know, the ones that are like 3 feet wide that you can just push down a giant hallway and collect all the dust at once. It is. It's like my Zen moment when everybody's out of the house and I take a giant dust mop and just push it around the whole apartment. Oh, I feel so good afterwards. You just look at that big pile of crap that you accumulate, and you feel like you really... Swiffer. Yeah. Oh, Swiffer's not bad. That's a good call, too.
Swiffer's nice. Look, you just click that thing on, just put it in those little holes, the little mop thing, and you just go, bam, it's done. It's perfect, man. And then the kids are napping, so I get to like mop the floors and clean it all up. It's really cool. And then also, you brought up the sweating thing. I want to, give a compliment to myself here, so everybody knows. I was at 240 pounds, Dan, probably like a year ago, and I'm down to 210 pounds as of this morning.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
That's good for the health. That's good for the health. Tell me what you got going on. What are the latest things at Sac Kings Nation? What's the latest on the Kings Court? How can people find all your stuff? Let's do a little Vince promo.
Vince promo. All right. Well, you guys can find me every single Monday at 9 a.m. Our time actually just changed to 9 a.m. on Dash Radio, where you can actually hear the Kings Court. Or, of course, you can go on iTunes and subscribe, or you can go on Stitcher. We're also on Spotify, so you can download and listen to the show there, where we have plenty of guests that come on and talk about the Kings. We also do a Kings Week segment where we have other team beat writers come on the show and preview our games of the week. With them to see like what they think about the Kings and what they're hearing about the Kings. So it's good to get a little around the horn type of sound on there. Also on Dash Radio, I got coming in November, and I think our first show airs on the second week of November. I have a fantasy daily DFS show coming to Dash Radio.
Nice.
I believe the shows are going to be Wednesdays and Fridays for the big slates of the week, which is going to be really cool. And it's going to be sponsored by FanDuel. So for any of you guys that are not into DFS yet, if you use the promo code SACKingsNation, they will match your first deposit on there. So go ahead and use that promo code. And then on Fridays and Dash Radio, and I believe this starts at the end of the month of November, is I have an NBA podcast coming out, and we are just working and negotiating for a new co-host.
Outstanding. You seem busy, Vince.
I'm busy. I'm always busy.
He is Vince Miracle, former host of Fantasy NBA Today, my good buddy at VM Center on Twitter. Give him a follow. Vince, see you later.
Later, man. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. I love being back here. I can't wait to do it again.
And do it again he shall. That's our old buddy, Vince Miracle. Good to talk to him. It's been a little bit. All part of this plot that I've devised here on Fantasy NBA Today to actually get guests on the show, so you don't have to listen to me lecture for an hour every night or day, whenever it is that you listen to this podcast. Big thank you to Vince. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at VM Center. Forgot to mention before we sent Vince off to his insanely busy day, we have a coupon code associated with every single guest here on Fantasy NBA Today, and we're going to make his Miracle just the way you think it's spelled. Miracle is the coupon code. That is $3 off anything at the hoop-ball.com premium store. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the premium tab, choose Go Premium, and whatever product you like, throw in the coupon code MIRACLE, get it for $3 off. Might I suggest the in-season product right now? Just $22 after you use the coupon code, and the $5 auto discount running right now for still 5.5 months of activity. So it's just slightly more, I guess, than $22 a month. It is $22 for the whole thing. It's slightly more than $367 a month for the rest of the way because you've missed the first 2 weeks, but it's not much more. It's like $4 per month. Like I said on a previous pod, just make your own tea or coffee for one day, and then you can get a premium membership for that month. Do that once a month from now until the end of the season, and then you can get the premium membership. I suggest you do, and use the coupon code MIRACLE. Again, big thank you to Vince. Wanted to do that first on today's show. I know normally we do the look back at storylines from the previous night, then the guest, and then a look ahead, but I felt Vince deserved top billing. It's my old buddy, man. We started this show together. It's been forever. We actually had this show going before we even had a podcast channel for it. It was Fantasy NBA Today, and it popped up on the Cause and Brew thread every once in a while. I would hide out in my broadcasting nook in the Bakersfield Blaze press box, and Vince was driving between jobs, and we put out a podcast. And that's how this whole thing started, basically. So pretty cool to get him back on. We'll talk fantasy with Vince next time he's on the podcast. I wanted a Kings update because he's watching that team like a hawk, and he's seeing what we see, which is refreshing. And it makes me feel like less of a lunatic for finally taking the sign off the treehouse. He also told me off air that he just pulled off a hell of a trade in one of his home leagues. So all good things, certainly, on that front. Yesterday's storylines, that's what we'll jump into now. We're going to look back at what was a fairly busy Tuesday by all accounts, and then look ahead to Wednesday, which is, in an odd twist, less busy. Only 7 games coming up tonight. It's been a countdown. 9 on Monday, 8 on Tuesday, 7 games on Wednesday. As usual, we're not going to look at every single box score. For instance, we just talked about the Kings for half an hour on this pod, so I don't really see much of anything in that ball game that I wanted to mention. Mo Bamba, I guess you could say, with the 5 blocks was a thing, but he's still not seeing enough minutes to be consistent. Jonathan Isaac is a hold, ladies and gentlemen. We told you it was going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride with this guy. His ceiling is so high. You cannot... I mean, we're talking about a guy who could be a top 40 fantasy player consistently at some point, hopefully by later on this season. That's not a guy. And if you want to, you can kind of envision it almost like an injury stash. I mean, I would still use him because maybe not in a game's limit situation until the consistency is fully there, but he's putting up some numbers and decent defensive numbers on most nights. He just got caught up, man. Kings look good these days. Nothing on that Kings side that changed our opinion of anybody, but that was certainly the story on the Magic side. That Hawks-Cavs game was one of our homework assignments from last night, and it resulted in something, but what it resulted in is a whole lot of confusion. So let's just break this game down. We'll take a moment with it and try to get a feel for both sides. Number one, Alex Len got the start, played 27 minutes, and put up 22 and 9 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. He went 9 for 9 from the field, missed half of his free throws. Whoops. This is not something that we're buying into. Dwayne Dedmon got a little bit of a respite. I believe this was a back-to-back for Atlanta, and that could be a big reason why. Dedmon is the center that's safer to own. He is your plodding top 100 big man. Alex Len is not that guy. The thing that I actually thought was more interesting, which I know sounds crazy, Jeremy Lin played 23 minutes, had 12 points and 8 assists, and the minutes didn't all come from Trae Young. Trae played 31 and a half minutes, so simple math would show you that not all of Jeremy Lin's minutes came at the point guard spot, or vice versa, depending on who you put at the 1 and who you put at the 2. If Jeremy Lin can get up to 24 minutes a game, he is worth rostering. He's a stat magnet. He had the second highest usage of anybody on the team behind slumping Taurean Prince, who, by the way, is a nice buy low candidate right now. But keep one eye on Jeremy Lin, ladies and gentlemen. If he's out there for 24 minutes, he's going to get 10 shots up. He's going to pass the ball like no one else can on this team. He's a better point guard than Trae Young in the early part of his career. The shooting percentage is never going to be very good, but you're talking about a guy that, 12 and 8 is, I would say, more assists than you could expect for in a 24-minute outing, but not necessarily more points. 24, 25 minutes for Jeremy Lin is more than enough to get him to 12 to 14 points per game, 1 to 2 3-pointers, probably 2 or 3 rebounds, 6 assists, more than 1 steal. He gambles, and on a bad team, you can do that. He's a good foul shooter. The turnovers are not going to be good for anybody on this Atlanta team. But one eye on Jeremy Lin, guys. Put him on the watch list. If any of that explosiveness starts to come back, if they start to use him in non-blowout scenarios, he could come on really quick. And that was an interesting little footnote in yesterday's game. It was the most minutes he's played in any game so far this year. He doesn't have it yet. He's shooting 34% from the field. He's not getting steals. But yesterday was an interesting sign of a guy maybe starting to get his timing back. Maybe not. I'm not picking him up yet, but I'm watching him. Back to watching him. He was a guy that I drafted in the last round a couple of leagues thinking maybe this was going to be his role, but health seeming to get in the way a little bit has slowed that down. Maybe we're starting to get there. Cavs side, equally weird, certainly, in that Larry Drew had his first game and they won it. Kevin Love, it sounds like, is going to be out for a month, so get used to whatever weird stuff is going on. Sam Decker played 29 minutes and had one of the best fantasy lines of the night. He went 4 for 6. His usage was 9 in his 29 minutes on the floor. That is a difficult level of contribution to keep up when you are Shane Battier out there on the basketball court. He's not going to go 4 for 6 every day. He's not going to hit 2 3-pointers every day. The rebounds, maybe he can keep that up. The assists, unlikely. The steals, I don't know. The thing about it is, you're probably going to see Larry Nance at least some of the time when this is going on. Maybe Nance plays better in the next ball game, and he gets the minutes over Decker. So I'm not buying that one after one game. If he starts to push Nance out, which feels very strange, then maybe you buy into it. Otherwise, Rodney Hood, 26 points. That's a season high. He's starting to wake up a little bit and should, by the way, score a lot, at least while Kevin Love is out. If you need points, take a shot. George Hill had 17 points, but he only played 20 minutes. Colin Sexton, we talked about them splitting the point guard minutes, and they did. Once again, in this one, Sexton had 17 and 8 rebounds, not assists, and he's another guy you keep your eye on, although I don't think the rebounds are sustainable. Cedi Osman had 20 points, but 5 turnovers. I mean, the hope is that he can get it going, but obviously playing against a bad Atlanta team was helpful for a lot of these guys. Tristan Thompson played 29 minutes and doubled. I hate Tristan Thompson's fantasy game, but if they're going to run him out there for 30 minutes, then you have to at least give him a look because he becomes a specialist type. 30 minutes, he can get you 10 to 15 rebounds most nights. That's what it takes for him. In fact, if you look at his game log this year, in the games he's played 24 minutes or more, he has had 13, 10, 9, 11, and 13 rebounds. And in the games where he played less than 24 minutes, he had 3 and 6 rebounds. They played a lot of minutes because Alex Len was on the other side. Does that hold up when they play a team that goes small? I doubt it, but maybe they want him out there for rebounding and some measure of defense. I would wait and see what happens in the next ball game, which comes up tomorrow. That's Thursday. The Cavs play the Nuggets, where there's a Nikola Jokic out there. And if you desperately need rebounds, maybe he's a guy you plug in and just, use him for a week. Try to get 40 rebounds out of Tristan Thompson and give your team a little boost in that regard. He's not a full season fantasy value, not even close. But keep a close watch on this Cavs team. We've already seen some pretty big changes here in one game under Larry Drew. Tomorrow we may get some more information on that. To me, no real information in Miami, Charlotte, other than good to see Kelly Olynyk bounce back after a rough one. He only played 21 minutes in yesterday's ball game, but did have 14, 3-3 with a 3-ball and a couple of steals. I think he's worth using until further notice. Dion Waiters, it sounds like, has been pushed back with his return. We don't know what's going on with James Johnson. Wayne Ellington should be back any moment now, and we'll see how that impacts things in Miami. Just not a great team. Josh Richardson, an obvious hold. Rodney Magruder is a hold right now. Olynyk a hold. Whiteside is a go. And that's sort of where you sit with the Miami Heat. I will make a mention briefly of old man Marvin Williams, who's tailed off. Jeremy Lamb also tailing off in yesterday's ball game. Charlotte is really, and Coach James Borrego is going to kind of a hot hand mentality. And in yesterday's game, it was Tony Parker who had 24 and 11, and that's not going to be the case every night. But Malik Monk also got hot in that game, so he saw extra time. The problem here is not that those guys are pickups. Tony Parker and Malik Monk are not guys you should be using on a nightly basis, but they're just good enough to throw a wrench into Jeremy Lamb, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is just good enough to throw a wrench into Marvin Williams, and so we're seeing a little bit more of a timeshare thing going on, and that is concerning because it just means that our guys, the guys we want to throw out there, the starters effectively, are not going to be good every single night, and that's annoying. There's no way around that. So I give you guys permission. If you don't need blocks, threes, and rebounds, you can part with Marvin Williams. There's other guys out there with a little more upside. I still like him. I think he's going to get it going at some point this year, but there's enough competition where even a guy like Jeremy Lamb, you could keep an eye on the waiver wire. I think I'd hold on to him a bit longer just because he does more when he's on the court. He's not your just regular old-fashioned 9-cat guy. But Willie Hernan-Gomez is out. Kidd-Gilchrist, I don't think he plays enough to be owned. So then you're sitting on Kemba and Batum are sort of the only truly safe plays for Charlotte right now until this thing shakes itself out, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. Danny Greenwatch, 2018, continued with a productive night. He had 10 points, a couple of threes, 2 steals, a block, 4 assists. I like what I'm getting out of Danny still. Despite Delon Wright coming back, he only played 14 minutes, and it didn't really come out of Green's bucket. Pascal Siakam is owned in every single one of my leagues. It's the reason that I haven't talked about him more, but he should be owned in yours, obviously. 15-15 and 3 steals in that ball game. Other notes from yesterday's efforts. Slow-Mo was a guy we were watching. He had 5 points, crazy low usage, but he played 28 minutes, had 11 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 steals. This is shades of the Kyle Anderson that we were hoping for. He should be owned. He should be... I don't know if you have the confidence to start him yet, but he got dropped in a lot of leagues, and hopefully you were able to scoop him up for the moments when he starts to get rolling and do the rebounding and assisting and stealing of the basketball. This is sort of what we're aiming for. So maybe don't get fully excited yet, but you can start to be kind of excited about it. Portland, we were watching Zach Collins. That was a story. He got 24 minutes in yesterday's blowout. A lot of it was garbage time, folks. So you sort of take it and be happy with it. He had 5 fouls, managed to hold value a little bit with 2 blocks. Otherwise, it was not a great performance. Yusuf Nurkic had 22 and 10, and so he was going to get the fourth quarter minutes if this game was closer. PJ Tucker was a guy we had mentioned as a guy you should be starting while James Harden is out. He had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2 threes, 2 steals, and a block. He's kind of Danny Greening for you right now with more rebounds and I would argue on the whole maybe slightly fewer blocks. But both of those guys, I mean, if you have PJ Tucker and Danny Green on a fantasy team, those guys are your sneakiest 9-category dudes right now. I think you can probably keep using PJ even after Harden comes back, but understanding that all of the stuff besides steals and threes will go down a little bit. So he's getting a bump right now. Enjoy that bump and then still use him. He's still a top 100 guy even when Harden comes back. He's not going to be the exciting player that everybody thought after he popped off for 19 on opening night. He's more like the guy you saw last night. 2 threes, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, sometimes a block. That's the guy you are starting if you're starting PJ Tucker. You're not starting the guy that's going to score in double digits. He's not that player. Last thing from yesterday's game, we were watching Jeremy Grant, who actually, by all accounts, had a decent game until he went 1 for 3 at the foul line. This was a blowout, or I think he would have logged a few more minutes late in this basketball game. Maybe. I don't know. Possibly. He's teetering for me. I picked him up in a number of spots on the chance that he would get to play 30 minutes a night, because if he does, he can get you a steal and a block and a 3. He can be your 1-1-1 guy on that club. If not, then you move on. He's a hold for me right now. I'm not starting him. He's on my bench. But he's a guy that I don't think you should kick away yet, just because there is the potential to be really interesting. He just can't miss so many stinking free throws. And over on the Clippers side, still a logjam at point guard, or all guards, really. Avery Bradley, Pat Beverly, Lou Williams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. All of these guys are trying to get in for minutes and having trouble doing so. Montrezl Harrell, by the way, the free throw thing is starting to level off a little bit. He's still been really good this year, but if you've had him his last 2 games, he's hurt you. Because in those games, I believe he's gone 5 for 10 from the free throw line over those 2 contests. It's going to level off. It always does. He's down to 73% at the free throw line after shooting whatever it was, 80, 90% those first few games. He's a 60-something% foul shooter. These things have a way of evening out. He still should be used, but understand that he's going to put a hole in your free throw number, so you just have to weigh whether or not that's worth it with the other stuff. I feel a little bit better about missing out on him in basically every league, because I thought he was going to be a bad free throw shooter, and then he had a week and a half where he made 90%, and now I feel a little bit better. I still would like to have him on my team because the field goal percent, the rebounds, the defensive efficiency, all that stuff is really good. But he is the bad free throw shooter that we thought he was. So that's Tuesday's games. Tried to get through those in reasonable order, not take too much time to go over the storylines, but there were some interesting things that went on in yesterday's ball games and worth exploring. Now we turn our page to tonight. The Wednesday evening slate. It is 7 games. Hey, I also wanted to mention, by the way, you can follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. This is a Hoopball presentation, so you can follow Hoopball at Hoopball Fantasy and at Hoopball Tweets. We jumped right into the Miracle interview, and I left off all the beginning of the show stuff, so I wanted to slip that in here in between talking about Tuesday and Wednesday. If you have a moment, please do subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate your help in that regard. We're growing. It's fantastic, and it's all thanks to you guys. And if you have a moment to rate and review the show, we would appreciate that as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the coupon code. Go get something at the Hoopball Premium Store. That's the funding of the operation as well. Wednesday night, Detroit is in Brooklyn. The Nets favored by 2.5. I think most people look at this game and think, what? Why? Well, Detroit played last night in Boston, an exhausting game where they covered and probably ran out of gas. Slight lean to the Brooklyn side, although Detroit has looked a little bit better to me this year than I thought. They've been competitive. They just haven't been that good to get over the hump. We shall see. They should, by all accounts, they should win this ball game, but tired legs. You got to travel after a big game the night before, ever so slightly into the Brooklyn side. Utah is in Minnesota. Jimmy Butler's sitting this thing out, so Utah should really have no trouble dispatching of the Timberwolves. Denver, 8.5-point road favorites in Chicago. The Bulls are really terrible, but you couldn't pay me enough to bet on either side of this game. Indiana, 5.5-point road favorites in New York. I don't know what to make of this. New York's got this new lineup going. They lost, then they won one. They're playing hard right now. I don't like it. Golden State, 11-point favorites. The assumption here is that Anthony Davis is not in this basketball game. Phoenix, 7.5-point home underdogs to the San Antonio Spurs, and the Lakers, 7.5-point home favorites to the Dallas Mavericks. Boy, that's a lot of points to lay for a team that doesn't look that great when the game comes down the stretch right now. I would have a lean to the Dallas side, much as I'd like to see the Lakers win this game easily. I think Dallas is going to hang in there. I think the Lakers do win, but covering 7.5 is not a zero ask. From a fantasy standpoint, well, the Knicks, obviously, are the homework assignment. Again, we got to see what's going on with this team. Does Ntilikina play big minutes and actually get involved on offense for a third consecutive game? By the way, we mentioned a couple days ago on this show, he was an ad. He should have been a speculative add to your team. I don't care if you don't use him for this basketball game, but you should have him already on the chance that what he started the last 2 days actually does carry through and he can maintain his level of aggressiveness that we've seen lately that was not fully evident last year and even the first week of this season. Phoenix, you're watching the point guard spot. We've seen a couple good games out of Elie Okobo. If he can keep that up, maybe they don't go out and trade for somebody. Devin Booker, when healthy, is going to do a lot of the ball handling for this team, but they sort of need a little bit of help at times. Booker's still not a great passer, and maybe there's something here, even if it's just for a short term. That's not a homework assignment game necessarily, but if you can watch it, I would recommend it. And those are probably the two games that you should really watch for a fantasy angle. Detroit, Brooklyn, not a whole lot going on there that we're keeping an eye on. I think we got a good feel for the Pistons now. Minnesota, Utah with Butler out. Maybe a look at what this team might be when he's not playing. Is there enough Derrick Rose? Points leagues, probably. Denver, we're still waiting to see if somebody's going to take over that extra scoring role that Will Barton filled for this team. So far, the answer is no. We did get word while recording this show that Jabari Parker is now the starting power forward for the Chicago Bulls. This was a move that probably needed to happen with so many guys on the shelf. It had been Chandler Hutchinson, but Parker was playing big minutes and putting up pretty good numbers while he's been seeing those extra minutes. He can't make a free throw lately, but the across-the-board stuff has been more than good enough to get him into a lineup. I know he's listed as a top 130 guy for the season, but last couple of games, he's averaged 8.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. It's the free throws that are weighing him down. Parker's shooting 65% at the foul line right now. Otherwise, the numbers are actually pretty good, and while he's not going to be a world beater at the free throw line, he's a 75%er over his career, and that number is going to come back up, so he should be used, and it doesn't change a whole lot else for that Chicago team. So not all that interested. I like Justin Holiday. Does this hurt his usage with Jabari Parker in the starting lineup? Maybe, but his value is in efficiency while hitting threes and getting steals, so I still like him, and I would still deploy him. Indiana, we're starting to see things crystallize a little bit more. More Darren Collison, a little bit less Corey Joseph. Hopefully Miles Turner can actually make his free throws in this game. He is still a lot of these Pacers actually are great buy low candidates. They played all those blowout games, so the minute totals were jacked up. Guys were missing, Collison was missing shots. Turner's been missing free throws. All of these guys, it's going to be very easy for them to move their way up the charts. All they have to do is regress to their career numbers. Simple. New Orleans Golden State, I have no interest in this basketball game from a fantasy standpoint. We'd already talked about Phoenix. San Antonio is an uninteresting fantasy team for me. And then Dallas, I think if you benched Wes Matthews, which I did for a couple of games, this would be one to throw him back in. Crazy up-tempo game coming up here. You're going to see big numbers across the board. On the Lakers side, there isn't a whole lot from a fantasy standpoint that we're watching other than can Lonzo Ball start to assert himself? Does any of this hurt Josh Hart? KCP has shown signs of life. What does Lance Stevenson do with the team? Nobody suspended and fully healthy. Can Brandon Ingram and LeBron play together? Those are all reality concepts that will be covered on our Lakers podcast, not Fantasy NBA Today. I think that about takes care of it for this show. There wasn't anything else I wanted to mention. The Jimmy Butler stuff, that's a storyline. Jeff Teague, by the way, also out. Knee stuff. So maybe I don't know if anybody is interested in streaming Tyus Jones, but I guess that's on the table as well. Derrick Rose seems like he's the guy that's going to play a ton, knowing Tom Thibodeau. And then if you got Karl Anthony Towns, if he doesn't capitalize on this ball game, there's a massive missed opportunity. So weird game for the Timberwolves. I'm sure Lakers fans, such as myself, are thinking, why couldn't these clowns sit out that ball game instead of this one. This is an interdivision game. They're playing the Jazz. But you know what? Everybody wants to beat LeBron, so what are you going to do? Andrew Wiggins, by the way, is questionable for that basketball game. It's probably too late for you to do much in the way of streaming unless you're in a league where moves happen for that day. And even then, I don't know that I would waste a move on it. A lot of these guys are going to be back in the next one. Hopefully Jimmy Butler is out of town by tomorrow. They can make that move with Houston tomorrow. Maybe there's a deal in place with the Heat that we don't know about. That could be a very large topic on tomorrow's podcast. Just saying. Stay tuned. And of course, if anything happens, we'll tweet about it until sun goes down. Happy Halloween, by the way, everybody, as we hit the end of this thing. Hope everybody's going to have a nice, safe evening. Get your candy. It made doing that Herbert voice seem extra fun on today's podcast. So I would remind everybody, make sure to check the candy wrappers. That was for Vince, who's no longer listening. And have a wonderful Wednesday. Enjoy the games. Enjoy your Halloween. Back with you tomorrow. We'll be talking to Adam Maines of Valley of the Suns. We're going to dig in a little bit on Phoenix. Of course, we recorded that episode before the Suns game coming up tonight. So if anything crazy happens, it will not be covered. But right now, as long as everything stays the same, some interesting insights coming up on the Phoenix Suns. That's again tomorrow's show. And then Brewski Live on Friday. We'll wrap up the week here in Fantasy NBA Today. That is all. I am Dan Besbris for Vince Miracle. A big thank you again to my old buddy coming back on the podcast. We'll talk to him in the not-too-distant future at VM Center. I'm at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Give us a follow. Have a great Wednesday. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.